This is the Pal Talk News Network.
The views expressed are solely those of the speaker and not necessarily those of paltalk.com, AVM Software, or its advertisers.
News Talk is online. News Talk Online, a production of paltalk.com, the largest multimedia interactive program on the internet with more than 4 million unique users on demand on iTunes and on YouTube and on Blip TV and on my blog, GaryBaumgarten.com, where you're encouraged to post your comments, whether you agree with yours truly or not. No retribution. And thanks to our good friends at CRN Digital Talk Radio, we're syndicated to an additional 12 million households. I am your host, Gary Baumgarten. I welcome you to the show, and I encourage you to go to paltalknewsnetwork.com, paltalknewsnetwork.com. Go early and often, just like voting in Chicago, because that site is updated throughout the day with information that you need to read in order to be an informed citizen of the world, information that you may or may not hear, see, or read in the mainstream media. Earlier today, President Obama held a rare news conference. The White House press corps is very frustrated by the fact that the president has been MIA. Other presidents have been far more accessible than President Obama. And it was mainly to answer criticism of his administration over the handling of the Gulf of Mexico oil spill. It's interesting how he got upset at the various executives of the various companies involved when they were in front of Congress because they were finger pointing, and he did his share of finger pointing today as well. He did accept responsibility for the government's response to the BP oil gusher, but he also again placed responsibility for the mishap itself on BP's shoulders. He said that the gusher is fouling the earth, fouling, F-O-U-L-I-N-G, the earth, in a way that has possible implications for generations to come. And he dismissed his critics who said that his administration has abrogated its responsibility. The federal government is in charge, Obama declared. BP is required by law to follow the government's directives. But then he sidestepped a question about BP's failure to follow the EPA's directive that it switch the dispersant it is using to one less toxic. Now, today, the head of the Minerals Management Service is supposed to oversee all this kind of stuff, Elizabeth Birnbaum, resigned. And he claimed that he was unaware until after the announcement of her resignation that she was out, which it seemed to me that the various members of the press corps found a little bit incredible. But he really laid a lot of blame on that agency, the Minerals Management Service. He says that it has been, quote, plagued by corruption, which is exceedingly strong semantics for a president of the United States to use. He said that for years there has been what he termed a, quote, scandalously close relationship, close quote, between federal regulators and the oil and gas industry, an industry that he said, quote, has leveraged such power that they have effectively been able to regulate themselves. Then he announced several steps that his administration is taking as a result of the preliminary investigation into the spill. The government is suspending exploration of 2 oil drilling locations off the Alaskan coast. It's canceling 2 lease sales in the Gulf of Mexico and off the coast of Virginia, and is extending the moratorium on new deep water wells for 6 months. There's been a 30-day moratorium over the course of this preliminary investigation. And then he said, and it seemed to escape the attention, maybe we'll see it in their reporting of the press corps, that operations at 33 that are being currently drilled are being ordered suspended. So that's a lot of oil drilling and a lot of jobs that are going to be affected by that decision. He acknowledged that people in the affected areas, especially those who live on the coast who see this sludge coming at them, are understandably frustrated by the response, but he insisted that it's the number one concern of his administration. Quote, this entire White House and this entire federal government has been singularly focused on how do we stop the leak and how do we mitigate the damage to our coastlines. Now, our friends over at the Talk Radio News Service, our Washington Bureau, who we will hear from at the bottom of the hour, have been following this story, of course, as well. And they have an interesting sidebar to what I just told you. Speaker Nancy Pelosi attributed any lack of oversight surrounding the massive oil spill off the Gulf Coast to, can anybody guess? Can anybody guess? To, there you go, Sharon, the previous presidential administration. Quote, many of the people appointed in the Bush administration are still burrowed in the agencies that are supposed to oversee the oil industry. That was her response to a question when asked if Democrats could have prevented or mitigated the crisis by keeping a closer watch on the industry. How long is this administration going to blame the previous? I do believe that the day that President Obama took office and appointed his cabinet was the day that he had responsibility over these agencies. And I do believe that the President of the United States is a Democrat. Now, I don't care really whether he's a Democrat or a Republican, because I'm not only nonpartisan, I'm anti-partisan, as I often tell you, my dear audience. But the fact is, he is the administration, and he is responsible. Quote, I've heard no complaints from my members, that means the Democrats. I've heard no complaints from my members about the way the president has handled it. Well, of course, they're not going to speak out to the Speaker of the House about the way the president is handling it. They don't want their districts to be cut off, because that's how Washington works. It's all about the money, honey. Look, it's time to stop this political shenanigans. Bush is responsible, the Republicans, the Democrats. Put that aside and start accepting responsibility. As Harry Truman said, the buck stops here.